Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll go over building the headlight housing area or the light buckets, as well as go over constructing the headlight objects. I've got open here in 3D Studio Max the corresponding start file for this lesson. And we've got the model fleshed out, using techniques that I mentioned earlier. I also have Photoshop up and running, and I've got the reference photos up here. And so we're just going to build this area here. And what I'll do is, it depends on if you're going to have an extreme close-up of your object or not. In building this car, I'm assuming the camera, in-game camera, will never get right up on the front area. So as such, we're not needing a lot of extreme details, but you would add detail as needed. The reason for saying that is we would build mainly this part of the headlights. And so we'll have the 3 bulbs. There's some stuff happening here, and that you could do in texture. You can build that in if you need to. But again, it depends on how close you'll be seeing the object and the amount of detail you're needing there. We'll also go over building the housing object here. All right, I'll just drag these off to my second monitor. And so we can just hop into 3D Studio Max here and start with the building process. And I'll go ahead and go over building the light bulb objects first. And so what I'll do is I build that separately and then move it into place on our model. And so I just go anywhere in my viewport. And it's best if you do this from the front viewport. And while looking at my reference, I just go ahead and construct the bulb. And I do that by creating a sphere in the front viewport, so it's facing me. Then I'll switch to my perspective view. And while looking at the object, I'd see which areas I need to keep. I'll add an edit poly modifier. Switch to face mode. And we're just going to strike away a nice portion there. So we'll just select that and delete it. And so now we have a nice circular object for a bulb. And we've just been needing the rest of the areas that connect to it. So I'll just go to my border selection, select the border there, clone it out to get some thickness, and just drag that out. And so now we have the body of the bulb object. In looking at the reference, I can see that there's an area here that comes up a little bit around the bulb. So what I'll do is I'll just switch to my edge selection mode, bring my selection here, convert that to a polygon selection, and just extrude it up slightly. Well, actually, I look at the reference and I see that it goes up more than slightly. It goes up around it quite a bit. And so now we've got this here, and we've used that technique. We've used this technique to get the bulb object going. There's an area that covers it as well. And so for that, what I do is just select some edges, ring my selection, convert that to a polygon selection there, or face selection. And then I just clone these. Actually, sorry. What we do is let's go ahead and detach these as clone. And now what you can do with those faces, you scale them up a bit. And I'm looking at my reference for this. And you just grab an area here, scale it down to get some thickness. And then clone those edges in. And now we have that small area there. And so what you do with this is the whole point of starting with a sphere and having so many edges present is we wouldn't be adding a turbo smooth to this. What we'd be doing here is basically just smoothing the faces, giving them one smoothing group, and then we'd examine the shading for that, and depending on how it looks, then we'd go in and add controlled edges to get hardness or sharpness where we need it. So we're wanting here to be a sharp edge. I just use my Swift Loop tool. and just add some edges there. And it would end up looking like that. Other thing we could do is just scale up the back area there. So it seems like we're looking into a recess. And so you do something similar for the bulb section of it as well. We just add a single smoothing group and then go in and add control edges where we needed them so we could get hardness. And again, this would not be further subdivided, so that's why we started with that much detail. Okay, so that would take care of that part. Looking at the reference, I noticed that there is an area here that goes in a bit. So I could just go in, do a ring selection, deselect the ones that I don't need, and we'll just drag this back. And let me just convert this to polygon selection there. And we drag that back. And I'm having difficulty here because I still have my control edge in that I had shown you earlier, but that's what we'd be looking for basically. I'll just put my control edge back. And so we have that. Another thing is there's an area up here that extends and curves down. And so for that, we just simply grab this edge, chamfer it, go for the faces that we're needing. I'll extrude those. And I'll just do a 0 extrusion, so they're just sitting right there. And then in my front view, I'd simply pull them out. And then make those faces planar. Delete the polygon, switch to border mode, convert that to an edge selection. And what I'm going to do here is basically just drag out the curvature that I'd be needing. And if you're needing more smoothness in an area, you just chamfer that edge just to get a bit more of a curve going. And I'll add 2 edges there. And so you can see now that that gave me a sort of a curve. And again, the only reason why we're doing this with this much detail is because we wouldn't be adding subdivision to this. We're trying to keep the detail in the object as close to what we see as possible without subdividing. And again, once you're complete with your modeling, we would go ahead and just set the smoothing group to 1, examine the mesh for any sort of discrepancy. And what we're looking for here is areas where we need to add our control edges or protecting edges. And so what we do is just go in, our Swift Loop tool, add an edge there, and you can see the shadings fixed. And we could add another one there. And definitely we could use two edges here to kind of protect what's going on there. Oops. And that would improve the shading. Finally, we'd need another edge there. When you deselect, look at your object. That's what it would look like. And so that's the process I'd use to build out the bulb. As far as the housing area for the headlight, what we do here is simply go in, and I'll add an edit poly, and we'd grab the polygons around the area that we're building the object for. And my reason for doing this is that we want this to sit exactly in this position. And while you could build an object or model out polygons and try to tweak them to fit, I find that it's easier if you just use the geometry from the area that you're working with, because already everything conforms. And so with those selected, I'll just go ahead and detach as clone. And now I'd have some faces in here that I'm ready to work with. And I'll just isolate the selection for now. And so from this point on, it would be a matter of grabbing some edges and just moving them over and tweaking the edges. Tweaking the edges to basically match our reference. And so what you see here is I'm just grabbing verts and readjusting so that I can get somewhat of a flat surface there. And I'll exit isolation, and you can see now that we've got that going across. And what you do here, let's make sure I can see all my verts. Let's just grab verts, move them up. And so we continue with that and building out this area until we filled in all this area here for our light buckets and the headlight housing. And then we just grab our completed bulb objects and place them in here. And it's easier to work like this, I said, at least for me, versus building the object and trying to get it to conform to that shape, because then you're working with a lot more verts. So from here, just go in and block all these in. Actually, I'd get some depth to that first. There we go. And then we'd go in and start blocking in all our border edges. Alrighty, that completes this lesson. I look forward to seeing you in the next. Thank you.